Hi, folks. Welcome. I'm Dan McDermott. This is the McDermott Report. Joining me from Lynchburg, Virginia, is Emily Williams, senior political writer at the Lynchburg Times. Emily, welcome.
Hi, Dan.
Okay, we're going to start off with, I had this great line, another earthquake strikes, this time in Silicon Valley, with Steve Jobs resigns from Apple, but not really. He's not going to be the CEO, I guess, but he's going to be, he wants to be he says if the board will allow him, he'll be the chairman of the board of directors and a member of the board and an employee director. So I like him. I like Steve Jobs. I think I like people who create stuff, and that's what he does best. And I think there's that. I use because I have attention deficit disorder. I'm a very creative person. I'm very disorganized. But I'm like functionally ADD now because I'm past 40, so you kind of learn what weaknesses you have over time, and you learn to get people who are good at those things and manage through. But most people who are good at inventing the light bulb are not good at running a light bulb factory. And the best example for that would be the guy who invented the light bulb, and then he founded the company that became GE, and he ended up getting fired by the board. So it's an apt example. But I don't know. I mean, he's a man surrounded in mystery. Always has been. Apple's really control freaky and secretive, but they put out really cool stuff. And I opted for an Android phone, and I'm happy I did. But I think if I was getting a tablet, I would get an iPad. I think that the reason when I last bought a laptop I didn't get an Apple was probably primarily cost. And what are your thoughts, Emily, on Steve Jobs, a living legend, stepping down from the helm of Apple Computer?
Yeah, I just really hope that the company stays the same innovative, design intensive company that it is. My one worry would be that under different leadership it would, change how Apple operates. And Steve Jobs has been Apple for such a long time that it's hard to imagine, someone else at the reins. But, we'll just have to wait and see on this one. It could be a great opportunity for, companies like Google with their new Motorola purchase, or someone else to step up and fill the void where Apple, has been dominant for so long. If they fall after this, but the company is so big and so powerful at this point that I think it would take someone really bobbling, really not knowing what they're doing to mess it up at this point.
Well, that's happened before, though, and Microsoft you could have said the same thing about just a few years ago. And now Apple surpassed them, and they don't seem to be doing much right except their core, which is producing Windows, and Windows 7 is great compared to the disaster that Vista was. We have 3 newspapers, and they use either XP or Windows 7. We just bypassed Vista, and now Apple's overtaken them in market capitalization. I think briefly they overtook Exxon, which is wild. It's an American success story, and it's exciting, to see what they've done. And they just put out good products. The iPhone, the iPad, the iPod before that, they're just really good at that. And you're right, it's all about design, and that is his strong suit, Steve Jobs. And he's just really good at creating a user experience. Microsoft is fairly good at that too, but I really think that what will happen now. I guess it's best this way, where it'll be difficult for his potential successor to. I guess he's suggesting Tim. Is it Tim? Tim Cook. He's suggesting him to be the successor. I don't know. I think this is the way to go because he'll be around to observe and guide. You can lay all the groundwork ahead of time you want, but if you just drop dead, there are always questions. Wait a minute, I've got this situation. I need your advice, and you're not around. So I guess if you have to choose a method of succession, whether it be a complete exit, voluntary or involuntary, or this sort of thing, he's certainly popular. And I don't know what he's like to work for. I don't know if, but it just seems like when he was there, when he came back, they've done amazing things. Come out with, and I mean the iPod was amazing, and then the iPhone, and then the iPad. He keeps kind of creating a new line of products, and then everyone follows him. HP is a victim, right? And as they for a few days entered the tablet business. Yeah,
successfully.
And now everyone's buying these tablets for $99. I don't know. I think I wish him well. You know, he's set, and he's ill. I guess he's got is it pancreatic cancer. But it's all speculation as to what the deal is. So we'll see. But so Steve Jobs stepping down as CEO of Apple Computer, and that's big news. Someone who's not stepping down is Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. I guess he's this guy. It's different from Saddam. How is it? Well, in your opinion, how is this a different situation from what we saw in Iraq? Obviously, it wasn't an invasion force. I mean, these are rebels rising up against a tyrannical dictator. Whereas in the case of Iraq, it was largely U.S. forces invading a country and overthrowing a dictator. So it's different in that way. It's different in that this doesn't seem to be as split as tribal. Iraq was basically three different, the Shia, the Sunni, and the Kurds in the north. And I think all these countries were drawn up by Europeans. But what are your thoughts? Is Libya, as the hunt is on and the bounty is on for Muammar Gaddafi? What are your thoughts tonight?
Well, I mean, when you talk about the group that overthrew, or the rebel group that's now putting pressure on the capital in Libya, since it looks like they're not quite in charge of Tripoli yet, that they are seeing some resistance from people that are still loyal to Gaddafi. But they're a much more unified group, at least on the surface right now, than what we saw in Iraq. The different tribes that you were talking about, have been at odds with each other forever and ever. And this is I'm not as familiar with Libya, but I believe that they did not have as many troubles with civil wars and warring tribes as Iraq did. And someone's probably going to jump on and tell me that's completely wrong. But our approach here and how successful it was really harkens back to it's a type of foreign policy that we've tried to use unsuccessfully in the past, and for it to work here, and if it actually does work, and if there's actually a stable government in Libya after this, it's I'm sure it will be pointed to in textbooks, political science textbooks for the rest of time, as it's really just the classic example of just a hands-off and yet supplying money and air power to overthrow a dictator that is hurtful to the people and hurtful potentially to our nation. So, it's really interesting. Hopefully this whole business about dirty bomb material is not going to become an issue. When that's involved, it's always it always puts a little bit more pressure on the rebel force.
Don't they always say that, though? Don't they always? Isn't that his WMDs, if you will? First of all, it's not like he's personally going out and doing this. Is the concern more that he will use them, or is it concern that they'll fall into the wrong hands? Everyone's always worried about things falling into the wrong hands.
I think the concern is probably more of the latter. When you're looking at a new, unorganized group taking power of a nation, they of course need money. And I think that would probably be the biggest concern, is that they would sell them to someone that we don't want them to sell them to. But I think right now we probably stand on great grounds with the rebels as far as relations go, and that this is, we're on their good side, and that's the best place.
Surely you're not suggesting the rebels are disorganized with their tank and their pickup trucks. They are disorganized. I think someone was on the TV saying, what was it? I'm in charge, or he's in charge, or who's in charge, and no one really knows. But I guess you go through this because it isn't like Iraq when we went in and they screwed up a lot. I think there was a great story in Reuters talking about the lessons learned from Iraq, and the first administrator before Paul Bremer said in an interview he's going to kick the football and down the field and see where it goes, And then Paul Bremer fired the army, disbanded the military, so you had all these angry guys with guns and no job roaming the streets, and that perpetuated the mayhem afterward for quite some time. So I imagine this time, although I don't know who the military is or whatever, and I guess they have these tunnels, and it's so crazy there. I keep waiting for Gaddafi and his men to suddenly appear out of tunnels and mow everybody down, and I wonder, he's really somebody surrounded by yes men. I went through this when I was in Liberia. The dictator there was Samuel K. Doe, and the U.S. supported Mr. Doe, as we did his predecessor. Doe came to power not through an election, but by he and I think 16 of his friends took the country over by murdering the president and his cabinet on the beach. They just shot him. And then he later, after we left, he used to drive in front of my house, Doe and his motorcade, the Mercedes-Benzes and stuff. And then he was killed in the Civil War afterward. I think Prince Johnson lured him to a meeting, and I know that the U.S. offered to get Doe out. They said, we'll get the Marines, we'll take you out, and we'll get you out of there safe. And he's like, no, my people will, they love me, just like Gaddafi saying this. And he ended up being literally skinned alive with a machete, and you can YouTube it if you are, eager to see that.
Oh.
But that's the guy. Yeah, it's wild to watch some guy get skinned alive on YouTube, and then, he used to drive in front of my house all the time when I was in Liberia and I was a kid. So, yeah, these guys are crazy. And I've speculated before on this program about whether he's going to sneak off somewhere the way with a graceful exit, such as Mr. Mubarak exercised in Egypt, probably not voluntarily, or if he's going to stick it out to the end, or if he's going to, we don't know, is he going to stay there and be have some sort of enclave or what? But it's interesting because I'm not sure where they could go. I'm sure they have places, but I'm not sure where they could go that is secure and private and could remain such for any length of time. Do you have a prediction to make? Emily promised a prediction tonight on when we'll get Gaddafi.
Did I really? No, I don't have a prediction to make. If you want to send me to Libya, Dan, to report for the Times,
you could wear your Under Armour, but with Over Armour. If anyone's in the chat room, if you want to weigh in and offer your 2 cents, since Emily's scared to make her prediction on camera. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the guy, they got a $1 million reward on his head, right?
Yeah, I think
he's fairly prominent there. He's easily recognized, I think. His picture's on all the walls. So they've got this statue they've been kicking around that they could use to identify him. I don't know. Maybe he can come and run Apple. Drudge has got this great headline, I resign, and he's got a small I and a capital R. He's great.
Oh, that's horrible.
Man, this guy. I'm glad he's not in the Virginia tabloid business. But, so Gaddafi's still out there, and these rebels, they're not quite as ragtag as they were. It took them a few months to get to take over this thing. And just like in East Germany, I remember there was the secret police in East Germany, and everyone was scared of them, and it turned out it was like a dozen guys with antiquated equipment, and everyone thought they were spying on every phone call, and it's just sort of the Wizard of Oz thing. Everyone's afraid of the image you portray, and just like Saddam, these guys always exaggerate their power and their influence in order to stay in charge and to scare people. They're surrounded by yes men because it's just like the sons, like, look, they love us. Look at these people. They're all in the street cheering for us. Yeah, because you have to, he's there. And they really believe, I know that they know they're rotten guys, but it's just like you go to death row and no one is going to tell you they're a bad guy. They're all, they made a mistake in judgment, or, everyone else might be bad, but you have a natural human instinct to not think yourself is bad, unless you're a straight up, mob guy. I don't know. We'll see. But this is interesting. If they got him alive, I don't think. When's the last time we put one of these guys on trial? I guess it's like a Noriega type, but this is. He's a billionaire too, right? He's a billionaire.
More recently,
he's probably got money hidden all over the place.
Who was the African dictator we recently?
Charles Taylor of Liberia, who replaced Sam Doe after he was skinned alive. Yeah, we're back to my Liberian theme.
Yeah, so, it's interesting. Although, I have to correct you a little bit on the East Germany thing, only because I was living in Germany recently and learned a lot about this because we're museum nerds, of course. And, they weren't spying on everyone's phones, but they were spying on a lot of people's phones. There was definitely some of that was true. It's just by the time that the wall fell, the money just wasn't there. And that's what happens when your funds are coming from the Soviet Union, which was also falling. So, it was due to that more than anything. But yeah, there was a lot of phone tapping that happened in East Germany, in the GDR, if you will. Yeah, it was. Yeah, they always call themselves the Democratic Republic. Yeah, it was really confusing in my German language course at first when I was learning that history. It was like, really? They're really the GDR? Post World War II is not something that we learn in school here for some reason, and it's really interesting. So I want to talk about this reality show, but that's a fun topic. But you want to talk about a hurricane? Tell me what's the latest on this hurricane. You're going to go? We're going to send you, right? Yeah. Well, okay. So this is my first person part of the story is I was supposed to get my one beach trip of the year this weekend. We were going to Virginia Beach, and it's canceled now because the hurricane is going to hit. They're estimating that it's going to hit the Outer Banks, and that's in North Carolina for anyone that's not from around here, on Saturday. So we're going to feel it, and the latest prediction is also that it might move right up the coast. So this might be a true nor'easter, I guess, if you will. I think the last time Maine really got hit by a hurricane was a few years ago now, but I remember being very tuned into it as a child growing up in Maine. We always looked for the hurricanes, and this could be a big one. So hopefully no one's gonna, and not Katrina big, more like batten down the shutters. Well, Katrina was big, but it was big because of where it hit, right? That's right. It's a swamp village, New Orleans. It's basically, it shouldn't be there, right? And and there's all these things to keep it from flooding, and then when a big storm hits, We've been flooded here in Front Royal. And I think Lynchburg, I don't know if Lynchburg's been flooded. They've got the river there, but not coastal flooding like from a hurricane. But yeah, it's... there are areas that's flood here. Yeah, and and this is going to get a little local politic nerdy, but, there's a whole branch of the city government that, looks at floodplains, and, if you're going to disrupt any of that, you have to get a special permit, and, some things are planned out much more than you'd think they'd be, I guess. Yeah, and sometimes it's to a ridiculous degree, but then when a building burns down and they look at the guy who approved it, and he's got to
answer for that. So that's what one inspector said. He said, people complain all the time if I'm an anal inspector, but when the building burns down, we show up at the scene and look and see what happened. And if my name's on that certificate of occupancy, I said it was safe to be in there. And if there's 12 bodies in there because it wasn't, then I didn't do my job. So I see, it's like cops give a ticket for running a red light and you get angry, but really they've seen, 15 people in their career dead because of that. And after you see bodies pulled off a windshield a few times, you kind of, get hard about it. So,
so hopefully Irene, with it hitting, they're saying North Carolina and then up to New England. So hopefully it will be hitting areas that will be able to take the extra water.
Sounds like the Great Eastern Fault Line. That's the whole thing. So I'm driving. I get this phone call, and it's from Allison, one of my salespeople. And she's like, "Dan, we just had an earthquake in Benton, in Warren County, Virginia." And of course, we don't have earthquakes, right? And so I'm like, "Okay, whatever, I said, "Let me verify this." So I'm going 60 miles an hour, down 340 or up 29 or whatever. And so I call Angie, who's another sales rep. She lives near Allison. I say, "Did you notice anything odd?" And she said, "Yeah, we just had an earthquake." I said, "Wow. How long?" 10 seconds. So now I think there's an earthquake. So I tweet. I got this big scoop, right? Warren County earthquake near Front Royal, Warren County, Virginia. I've blown the lid off this story, right? And then I called my dad. And my dad says, "Yeah, we had an earthquake here too." And he said he called the Frederick County Sheriff's Department. My dad's retired government guy. He's got all the numbers, right? Probably in his head. So he gets on the phone within 10 seconds. He's calling the Frederick County, Virginia Sheriff's Department in Winchester, 15-minute drive away. And he says, "This is, Jack McDermott in Stevens City, and we just had an earthquake." And the lady's like, "An earthquake?" And then all of a sudden she starts screaming, "Oh my God, the building's shaking." So it was like 10 seconds after that it hit Winchester. So now I know, the earthquake started in Warren County, it's going north, right? This is what I'm thinking. And on my big giant scoop story, right? And then I called the radio station and I said, "Hey, what's the deal? Did you guys feel this earthquake?" He's like, yeah, earthquake, And they said they were watching the Little League game in Pennsylvania, and about 15 seconds after they felt it, it was on TV. It was live on TV. Have an earthquake. Now I'm thinking it's not just in Warren County that had the earthquake, and so then my phone blows up from AP, from Reuters, from CNN, earthquake near Washington. And I guess it was in Mineral, Virginia, which is near Fredericksburg. It's a little town, right?
Yeah, it's right in between Richmond and Charlottesville.
Okay.
Those are the big places. A little over 2 hours northeast of Lynchburg. I was all over this because I was, of course, at home when it happened, and it was amazing to me, as a journalist, to see, to firsthand experience something happen and then see the lag time between it happening and it showing up on the internet. Because we were, relatively close to the epicenter here. So when I first Googled earthquake Virginia, I didn't get anything. Because, at first I didn't think it was an earthquake. I was convinced that, something was going on with, the sewage system or the water system under my house. But my dog actually was sleeping downstairs, and she ran upstairs to me when it first started happening. And we sat in a doorway together, like good, trained earthquake survivors, I guess. And this is, coming from growing up in Maine, so I guess someone trained me well. We sat in the doorway, and not much happened besides the china, rattling, our dishes rattling. But I heard that at the epicenter they actually had, chimneys fall and, no one's died, I think, or no one got injured, from what I've heard. I think the worst that's gone on is that the Washington Monument's closed.
You were so brave, Emily.
So brave. We were. We huddled in the doorway, and we were all set.
How long did you huddle
we
before you're like,
outside.
okay, this is really boring?
No, it didn't last. I mean, it was probably like 30 seconds long.
Oh, I heard 10 seconds. 30 seconds, that's a bigger deal.
Well, it was long enough for my dog to make it upstairs and for me to, like, because it started off kind of slow and then it got bigger. It did. It lasted longer than I've felt earthquakes before. Maine gets them every once in a while, which you wouldn't think it would, but I think I felt maybe 2 or 3 earthquakes growing up. The other interesting thing that I found out through my, extended family is that my mother felt the earthquake all the way up in Augusta, Maine, which, is not on the bottom tip of the state. It's a couple hours north. So, it was far-reaching. It's incredible how the eastern coast is all connected like that. Must have to do with the type of rock that we have, maybe, that it would go so far away. But
they said that the West Coast, I don't know where I heard this. I was listening to everything, right? While driving 60 miles an hour. And I think they said that the West Coast, and they're of course laughing at us in a mocking way, like, you guys are morons, this is nothing. But the West Coast is newer, right? So someone described it as like, when they have one, it's like jelly, the land, whereas we're like a rock because we're older, and this coast is, and so that would be why, because it started a mineral, and they did felt it all the way up to New England, and I don't know how far south, but I'm so disappointed because I did not get to experience. I've never experienced. I've been through a lot of stuff, right? I've seen people get killed in front of me more than once,
wow.
And I've never been through an earthquake, so I was driving and missed it. My big scoop.
Well, maybe we'll get another one. It only took 100 years for us to get one this big, so maybe we'll get another one, Dan.
Well, of course I say that, and I'll be at the top of some building and die. Famous last words.
From it.
Yeah. So
don't jinx.
So we had the earthquake, and we all acted. It was news for a couple reasons. One, because it was news. I mean, it doesn't happen here, right? A 5.9 in LA would probably be nothing, I'm guessing. I don't know. And we don't build anything. I drove, like I said, I was driving a 3-hour trip to Lynchburg, and then got some equipment, came right back, and I didn't see anything, not even a lawn chair knocked over, nothing. And so I thought, well, gee, it appears that everything's intact, and we don't build for earthquakes, I guess. I don't know. Maybe we do. Maybe a zoning person can correct us in the chat room.
Well, here's an interesting bit of information. There's a power plant that's right near the epicenter. Anna? Lake Anna
power plant? Yep.
Yep. And it's a nuclear power plant, and their reactor tripped, like it's designed to, turned off. So they do. I mean, I think they said it was designed to withstand 6.2, and this was a 5.9. So, it worked like it was supposed to. It's really, I don't know. I'm sure the NRC is going crazy with checking to make sure everything's up to earthquake standards. Plants are getting tripped on the eastern seaboard.
Yeah, we'll have to get all new earthquake-proof buildings now. I don't know. I mean, it was kind of, it was news. And it was news because it was near Washington where all the networks are. And so they all felt it. So they all got to go on there and say, we were evacuated from the newsroom. And anything that happens, just like Larry Sabato pointed out that they were going to make a big deal about Tim Kaine running for Senate because it's easy to cover for them because it's right in Virginia. Whereas if it was in Wyoming or something, Nebraska, it wouldn't be as big news. I guess it's just geography. But anyway, we survived the earthquake of 2011 so far. And
yeah, I think the best the best graphic that captures it is the one that's floating around Plus right now that has a lawn chair set with one chair tipped over, and it says "We will rebuild."
I had Never Forget, or I found one that said Never Forget. Yeah, that's a great picture.
It is.
Okay, so Rick Perry, the new Gallup poll's out. Rick Perry has a 12-point lead for the Republican nomination over Mitt Romney. You could say what you want, but he's not boring. I think Mitt Romney's boring. Ron Paul's not boring, but he's stuck at 13%. I think a lot of it is just perception. He never gets covered. They never cover him, even when he does well. You know, I don't know. I like a lot of what he says. Michelle Bachmann, and I don't think it's fair to compare. Everyone keeps comparing her to Palin. You like Palin because they're both women, when really they're not that. I don't think they're this similar. I think Bachmann is more of a religious right conservative. I think both of them are to some degree, but I don't think Palin that way. I think more of like a Tea Party economic issue type conservative. What do you think? Am I wrong on that?
You know, I think they do have a lot of similarities as far as policy is concerned. And they both have the same sort of celebrity appeal almost. Like their personalities are very... She's appealing to the voter base in the same way, personality-wise, that Sarah Palin was. So I think it's unfair to say that the only reasons connections are being drawn is because they're both women, because I'm sure that if, I don't know, name any other female politician, really, I think that there are other similarities. You know, if Hillary Clinton was running, I don't think they'd be drawing similarities between her and Palin. You know, I think, I don't know, I'd put Palin right in the same religious right as Bachmann. She was just as outspoken in her VP campaign about how she was Christian and what she wanted for the Middle East based on being Christian. And, you know, there's a number of examples.
All right. Yeah, I mean, no, it's, I don't know. That's not a big deal. But I think it's interesting, Rick Perry, some of its newness. Most people don't know much about Rick Perry or Mitt Romney or Michelle Bachmann or Herman Cain. They know about Newt, who's got 4%. Rick Santorum, I don't know. I'm just not Tim Pawlenty and Huntsman. Yeah, so we'll see. But that Jersey guy was cool. Chris Christie, when they kept trying to get in. And he's like, look, if I have to commit suicide to prove to you guys. He was a colorful character. And Rick Perry is, I guess he's not going to secede now if he gets to run the whole country. All right, so Greenwich, I guess Connecticut? Is it Connecticut?
Yes.
They had a reality show, and apparently the town has asked them to cease and desist. This is from CBS, a local affiliate down there. Originally it was in the Greenwich Time, which I guess is a publication there. They're doing this show. You ever seen that show, What Would You Do? I guess it's a take off of Candid Camera. I don't know if any of the folks in the chat room have ever seen the show, but it's described, the show sets up morally difficult situations and secretly films people's reactions. And they were set up in front of a store, or stores, and they're saying it had a negative impact on business, and that one of the show's scenes caused an alarmed resident to ask a store employee to call police. The concern was that they were set up in front of businesses. Having it over 2 days would have an impact, so they've asked them to leave. What do you think about the whole reality TV thing?
Well, you know, it's totally ballooned. Like, it's gone much farther than I think anyone would have ever expected it to go. This show sounds, and I, of course have not seen it, but it sounds a little crazy that they would unknowingly present moral situations to people. I mean, that's a little... and I think that the town probably is totally within their rights to ask them to leave. If they're disrupting the peace and making citizens feel like they need to call the police, it's probably stepping over the line. But it's really funny because reality TV started off with shows like Survivor, and The Amazing Race was one of the early ones that were very putting normal people in abnormal situations. And then we saw it branch off, I think, into several other categories like Real Housewives, where you take people that are in quote-unquote normal situations that others would find interesting. And then there's the whole other category that's arose from it, which is these talent-seeking shows, which, I think it almost harkens back to variety shows like Star Search and the Ed Sullivan Show. And I think that that's probably, if I had to point to something, and this is completely just my opinion, but if I had to point to something good that came out of reality TV, it would definitely be, this idea of finding the everyday man that has talent. I think that's great for the country. But then again, it's the same people, no matter what show, making the money off of it. So
well, more money because it's cheaper to produce these things than scripted programming. That was one of the big reasons that they were all for Jay Leno's show at 10 o'clock, because it was so much cheaper. But I like some of them. I was on one, right, Real Housewives of D.C., and I can tell you that's real to a degree. I mean, what I saw, there was real tension in the room, and but I think some of them are great. Like some of the talent shows are neat, and it's really democracy. The people are choosing. It's not who slept their way to the top or whatever. It used to be the old movie about Loretta Lynn. And they were driving around to radio stations trying to get them to play their records. It's not like that anymore. And it was, there's programmers, consultants who tell the big stations what to play, and they're, it's the same so many songs, and they only have an hour, right, that they got to fill, and they got to repeat the hot songs so many times because that's what people want. The new Lady Gaga song, I must hear it. So that doesn't leave a lot of room. It's not like the internet where you could choose any video you want. I mean, a TV station, a radio station, you've got X amount of time. And so I think that some of these shows are neat because it's like the Susan Boyle. What a great story. That this woman who, a little out there, got some issues and just an amazing talent. And I don't know how much of that was produced, that their reactions, the rolling of the eyes as she came out, and said she would like to sing like so-and-so, and it's like, oh, really? And then she just nails it. And I think that they rehearse ahead of time and that they kind of know who's good. But I don't know. Some of those are great, but some of these things, some of it's just absolute trash. But we've always had trash television. The Morton Downey Jr. show, and remember Geraldo was punched in the face on his show. He had a broken nose on the cover of the National Enquirer or something. It sells, What was that one show that there would be a fight every day? It was something like, I'm sleeping with 3 of my brothers-in-law at the same time, or something. Just some ridiculous, my daughter and my wife and my grandmother. I'm not sure which one is carrying my child, or what. I mean, just crazy.
Jerry Springer.
Yeah, and every day there would be a fight.
I think that this is probably... there's always been trash TV. I agree with that.
People watch.
Right back to the beginning.
And it doesn't speak well to the female gender, Emily, that they're normally on during daytime. I think that's most of their audience is female.
I think there's quite a few stay-at-home dads now, too.
Now there are.
Thank you.
I'm going to get in trouble for that. I was just kidding.
But I think there's plenty of trash that's on during prime time, too. So it's,
Yeah, with the...
I don't know. I never watch television on my television anymore. The only TV I watch is either through the internet. Well, always through the internet, either on my computer or through Netflix with our game console. So
you can tell a lot about the program by the advertisers. I used to work in radio, right? And there was some of the the AM side was these wild talk shows. It was all it was conservative talk, like the Black Avenger, and these guys I'd never heard of before. Not like Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity, but like the B or C level talk show hosts, that are on these low power AM stations. It was a sister station to the bigger FM, and the advertisers were a trip, like gold, of course. Storable foods, for when Janet Reno comes to take your guns, you can hold out, storable and live for 12 years on these 30-year shelf life foods for when the government comes, and just wild stuff, get rich quick schemes. But you don't see that, in your more mainstream shows. But then I don't know. Who am I to judge? If just like we discussed in the last show about whether we're policy wonks and are people who don't even know that Libya exists. On one extreme, where we're like, well, gee, that's frustrating because there are funny things I want to talk about or observations, and it's hard to find people sometimes who will understand. It's frustrating. And then, but the other side of the coin is like Ryan, your boyfriend, who's a nuclear engineer. There's plenty of things that he probably wishes he could talk to you or me about, but he can't because we'd have to go to school for six years to figure it out. So I guess it's whatever you're into. And some people like reality TV, and they're making money off of it. So more power to them. You going to read Dick Cheney's book? It's coming out soon. He says it's going to... What did he say? My book will have heads exploding in D.C. Will yours be one of them? Will you be camped out at Sam's Club at night waiting?
Hopefully the heads are exploding because they're blown away by the knowledge and not by an errant, bullet from his hunting rifle.
Oh, that was a good dig. That was a dig just then. If anyone missed it,
it was a good one. No, I won't be reading it. I have so many other books that I would rather be reading than Dick Cheney. Oh, speaking of books, though, I wanted to bring this up because I actually saw the. Have you seen the new Kindle ads that Amazon put out?
I have not.
I know someone's going to yell at me for saying this, but the two that I saw today were very borderline, almost a little stereotypical towards women. I don't want to say sexist because they weren't sexist, but the ad, both of them involved two different women and the same guy coming up to them. One was reading a book, one had a massive purse. So in the one with the massive purse, the guy comes up with his Kindle and says, "Oh, why do you have such a big purse?" And she said, "Well, so I can carry my phone and, a couple books for reading and a newspaper and a magazine." And he was like, "Well, you could just have a Kindle and not have such a big purse." And I don't know. The other one was talking about, the sensation of folding down a page in a real book. And they just were they made me feel a little uncomfortable. I don't like thinking that the only people that aren't picking up e-readers are women that are into their books. I mean, that's not true, I don't think. Granted, I don't have an e-reader, and I do enjoy holding a real book in my hands. But, I think my boyfriend also feels the same way. So I don't think it's a women won't use technology issue like they're portraying it.
Yeah, I don't have any. I used a Kindle once, and it was cool. Surprisingly lightweight and durable feeling, but I just have I have a laptop computer, right, which is just impractical in a lot of situations, and the tablet, I don't know, I may get a tablet at some point, and I have my Android phone, which is pretty big, and that's neat. I like that a lot. So I don't know, there's all these different size gadgets for what your situation is. You can only carry so many, or you look like that kid in the commercial with the belt, and all these different things.
I know that one too, yeah. But I mean, I don't know. There's still, I feel like there's still pros to doing books instead of Kindles. I mean, like if I leave my book on the subway, then I'm not out several $100s. I'm out 20 tops, And like books are just so cheap and durable, and replaceable that you can argue as much as you want for the Kindle, but I think I would definitely purchase an iPad before I purchased an e-reader. Just for the amount of things it can do. But that's me. And I'm sure that everyone else is going to be calling me a feminist now for getting angry about that commercial, but
you're allowed to be, I guess.
It's the way it is. Yeah, I guess so.
Angry female journalist.
That's right.
All right. Anything else burning you want to chat about?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
Oh,
if anyone is stuck indoors with the storm this weekend, I posted a great recipe for a thunder cake that's from this great old book, children's book. You should check it out. It's supposedly better if you make it while it's stormy outside. So.
Thunder cake? Could you elaborate briefly on what that is?
Yeah, there's this book, and it's actually called Thunder Cake. It's a picture book. It's a children's book by Patricia Polacco, and I know I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. But the whole premise of the book is that there's a little girl and her grandmother, and the little girl's afraid of the thunder and the storm outside, so they go around collecting all the ingredients to make this chocolate cake and make it, and by the end, the girl is not afraid of the storm anymore. So, there's only so many opportunities when you have a really stormy day to make the thunder cake. So if you are on the eastern seaboard and you're going to be stuck indoors, like I'm sure we will be this weekend, it's a good time to make it. And the recipe's over on my Google Plus page.
All right, awesome. And that, of course, is gplus.to/EmilyKW. You can also catch her awesome writing at lynchburgtimes.com, where she is the senior political writer and writes about politicians over 65. Whatever, I'm just kidding. My Google Plus page is gplus.to/McDermott. And Emily, thanks so much for being part of our program this evening.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks to everyone for watching and who will watch. And be brave as this hurricane approaches. Be safe. All right, thanks. That is it for the McDermott Report for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.